Disney recently held its quarterly earnings call, and this is something that I've grown to. I like to cover these now because it is often the case more is revealed during these earnings calls than just financial data. They break down the spreadsheets, but then they get into a question and answer session, and these are often very revealing. Such was the case for the Q2 earnings call this year. Financials were discussed. Hasn't been a great quarter for Walt Disney World. We'll get into that in a minute. But we also heard from Bob Iger, and he had a few things to say about Ron DeSantis and the state of Florida and Disney's ongoing feud.
Does the state want us to invest more, employ more people, and pay more taxes, or not? Thanks.
Cliff notes he's not very happy, and he's basically daring them to keep at it. But before we get into that, let's talk first about a few of the key takeaways from this quarter's earnings call. Disney Plus and Hulu are merging together. Well, sort of. Disney first has to complete its purchase of Hulu. They don't own it outright yet. This is something that began. They first bought a share of Hulu when they bought Fox. Once they gain complete ownership of Hulu, they'll be able to do whatever they want with it, and they're going to combine it with Disney Plus. Now, Disney Plus and Hulu are going to keep their original apps, their user interface, but they're going to have it, combined into one app, which is kind of a shame because the Hulu interface is just terrible. It's not good at all. So basically, what they're doing really is they're just turning it into one login, one set of credentials, and you can log into both, and you just toggle back and forth between the two. Further, on Disney Plus, Disney mentioned that they lost 4 million Disney Plus subscriptions. Now, that sounds pretty bad. The media was all over this. In fact, I'm sure it had some effect on the stock price, but it's not anywhere near as bad as it sounds. Those sub losses are attributed almost entirely to Hotstar, which is Disney's India-based version of Disney Plus. Hotstar itself lost over 4 million subs all by itself, but subs were otherwise up. They were a little down in the US, up internationally. So too were subs for ESPN Plus and Hulu, which really isn't that big a deal when you consider that Hotstar, you buy that for like $1 a month. It factors very little on the bottom line. It counts as a sub, but it only counts as $1 towards the bottom line, whereas what Disney Plus is running for anywhere from $7 to $12 right now, I think. We've got more to talk about on Disney Plus on a separate tangent, so hang in there for that. But let's talk real quick about parks. We talked about that a bit also in our previous video about the changes coming to Florida parks and why that might be, obviously because they're not doing very well, but all the other parks seem to be doing pretty good. Disneyland is going great, as usual. Disneyland pretty much always wins, it seems like. But the international parks are a special highlight in this quarter, especially Shanghai. They noted Shanghai specifically. Now, I think, though, some of that might be due to Shanghai is still going up against closed park numbers, so that might have something to do with it. But they basically doubled their numbers. They did a little over $500 million, 500 million something in 2022, this quarter over quarter. This year they did double that, just about a little over $1 billion. But the real highlight of that earnings call is Bob Iger feeling himself. He was really feeling himself on this call. Somebody naturally brought up Florida, and he was more than willing to talk about it. In fact, I'm just going to let the whole thing play because all of it is really interesting.
Regarding Florida, I got a few things I want to say about that, Phil. First of all, I think the case that we filed last month made our position and the facts very clear, and that's really that this is about one thing and one thing only, and that's retaliating against us for taking a position about pending legislation. And we believe that in us taking that position, we are merely exercising our right to free speech. Also, this is not about special privileges or a level playing field or Disney in any way using its leverage around the state of Florida. But since there's been a lot said about special districts and the arrangement that we had, I want to set the record straight on that too. There are about 2,000 special districts in Florida, and most were established to foster investment and development, where we were one of them. It basically made it easier for us and others, by the way, to do business in Florida. And we built a business that employs, as we've said before, over 75,000 people and attracts tens of millions of people to the state. So while it's easy to say that the Reedy Creek Special District that was established for us over 50 years ago benefited us, it's misleading to not also consider how much Disney benefited the state of Florida. And we're not the only company operating a special district. I mentioned 2000. The Daytona Speedway has one. So do the Villages, which is a prominent retirement community, and there are countless others. So the goal here is leveling the playing. If the goal is leveling the playing field, then a uniform application of the law of or government oversight of special districts needs to occur or be applied to all special districts. There's also a false narrative that we've been fighting to protect tax breaks as part of this, but in fact, we're the largest taxpayer in Central Florida, paying over $1.1 billion in state and local taxes last year alone, and we pay more taxes, specifically more real estate taxes, as a result of that special district. And we all know there was no concerted effort to do anything to dismantle what was once called Reedy Creek Special District until we spoke out on the legislation. So this is plainly a matter of retaliation while the rest of the Florida special districts continue operating basically as they were. And I think it's also important for us to say our primary goal has always been to be able to continue to do exactly what we've been doing there, which is investing in Florida. We're proud of the tourism industry that we created, and we want to continue delivering the best possible experience for guests going forward. We never wanted, and we certainly never expected, to be in the position of having to defend our business interests in federal court, particularly having such a terrific relationship with the state as we've had for more than 50 years. And as I mentioned on our shareholder call, we have a huge opportunity to continue to invest in Florida. I noted that our plans are to invest $17 billion over the next 10 years, which is what the state should want us to do. We operate responsibly. We pay our fair share of taxes. We employ thousands of people. And by the way, we pay them above the minimum wage, substantially above the minimum wage dictated by the state of Florida. And we also provide them with great benefits and free education. So I'm going to finish what is obviously kind of a long answer by asking one question. Does the state want us to invest more, employ more people, and pay more taxes, or not? Thanks.
Damn. Damn. So a couple things stuck out to me in these comments. First, as Iger said, if the goal really is from Florida and DeSantis, if their goal really is to level the playing field, to remove any perceived bias or special, treatment that Disney might be getting, if that's the goal, what of the other 2,000 special districts? Now, not all of them are being given the same abilities as Disney. Not all of them are on the same scale as Disney, but there are others. He noted the Daytona Speedway and the Villages, which are two notable. I mean, everybody knows about these two who are paying attention. What about those two? But that's kind of a rhetorical question because it's clear that Disney is being targeted in the way that the laws are written, and they are written with a pointed arrow directly at Disney. They word those laws as to say, we're talking about Disney and nobody else. And the legislators are saying it out loud because Disney kicked the hornet's nest. Second, he makes an effort to remind everybody that Disney is not acting nefariously. This is something that I brought up in a previous video. It's not as if they've been skulking about and doing things to flaunt or to take advantage of the district. They operate responsibly, though DeSantis tries to make us believe that they're not, hence the new law that they just signed into effect that is going to allow the state to do inspections of the monorail, as if to suggest that Disney's not maintaining their park properly, which everybody knows that they are. Although I'm guessing he's targeting the monorail because there has been, there was a cosmetic or superficial damage to the vehicles. I don't know if that rises to the level of safety. Anyway, that's another conversation. They pay their fair share in taxes, $1.1 billion, that's per Iger, $1.1 billion last year, largest taxpayer in Central Florida. And they also pay their cast pretty well, well above the minimum wage in Florida. As a matter of fact, they pay their cast more in Florida than they do here in California, and yet we have a higher minimum wage. So it actually pays better to work at Disney. It's a good gig by the sounds of it. And then he closed with something of a mic drop moment. Disney has benefited from the Reedy Creek Agreement, obviously, definitely, but so too has the state of Florida. Some would argue, though, that the district has outlived its purpose. Sure, they needed Disney's help 50 or 60 years ago, and Disney did their thing, but that time has passed. We are now, the state of Florida is doing fine. The tourism district is doing fine. They don't need Disney anymore. Well, I should say they don't need to have Disney have those special abilities anymore. Everything is on autopilot now. And this is where I think Iger and the Disney company are starting to take things a little personally. Listen to the emphasis that Iger places on the word we in this statement.
We're proud of the tourism industry that we created.
The tourism industry in the state of Florida that we created. And he's trying to say, I think, that they still do, namely via the $17 billion that he said that Disney was looking to invest in Florida parks in the coming years. He's asking, do you want that? And he closes with that question. And I got to tell you, I think he's been sitting on this question. He's been holding on to this as his zinger moment for a while, I'm sure, because he threw it out there with ease. I was just silky smooth the way he threw that out there. Do you, the state of Florida, still want those things? And he inferred elsewhere in that call that Disney's now, they're weighing their options about where to spend that $17 billion that they had set aside mentally. Maybe they don't spend that money in Florida. Maybe they invest it somewhere else. By the way, I think that would be a horrendous decision. You've got Epic Universe opening in the next, year and a half or so? So I think it would behoove Disney to spend that money at Florida. But, it's a threat. Which, by the way, let's get into that. I have an observation. Iger first mentioned this $17 billion. This was not the first time he's mentioned it. He mentioned it in a investors call about a month ago, back in April. And when I heard that, when I first saw that come across my feed, that Disney was proposing to spend $17 billion at Walt Disney World, my first reaction is, no, they're not. I don't think that's true at all. They just got done saying in the last earnings call that they were going to cut capital expenditures. They're trying to save a bunch of money after all. They're in a huge cost-cutting initiative. So now, somewhere along the line, they've come up with $17 billion to spend in the parks. So I thought that the reason why he said that was, at the time, to be something of a carrot, something to motivate DeSantis in the state of Florida to pull back, to stop and say, look, we want to spend a bunch of money. Let us spend a bunch of money. That'd be cool. Wouldn't that be great? But not as a threat. It wasn't a threat then. It was a carrot. It was an enticement. He was trying to say, be nice, I think. Now, now it's a threat. He's threatening to take away that mythical $17 billion and spend it somewhere else. But I do feel like it's kind of a dubious statement, and it's a little bit of theater on Disney's part. Look, politicians, they're very good at political theater, but let's not pretend like Disney doesn't know how to do theater also. They are very good at political theater, be that, or media theater, as it were. Now, having said that, he's right to bring it up. Does the state, again, I'll say this again, just as he did, does the state want Disney to invest in their business, to bring in more jobs, to create more tax revenue, to act like a good corporate citizen? Do they want those things or not? Because I'm positive they won't if he keeps at it. Why would Disney be at all motivated to spend any money, be that mythical or real? Why would they be motivated to put any more money into a park in a place where they're not welcome and not treated well? And by the way, he is still keeping at it. Well, I should say that the things that I'm about to bring up happened prior to Iger's statement. Now, Iger's statement, I hope it has the consequences that they were intending, because DeSantis does seem a bit unpredictable. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know if you can say, okay, we're going to say this thing and he's going to do that. Anyway, DeSantis has already recently, I think this is a few days ago, he's kind of already claimed victory. He's claiming victory because Disney has not said anything publicly since, DeSantis and the state got involved with Reedy Creek. Said anything publicly about, the Don't Say Gay bill, the Parental Rights and Education Act. They haven't inserted themselves into any sort of political conversation since then. Per DeSantis, in his words, the party is over for them. They haven't made a peep. Which is true. They haven't made a peep, except for the lawsuit they filed where they claimed 6 violations of the U.S. Constitution. That's something. That's saying something. And with that considered, I feel like Disney would be crazy to start talking at this point, to say anything more. I mean, any lawyer will tell you, if you feel like you're destined to see the inside of a courtroom, the very first thing you do before you do anything else, well, besides call an attorney, before you do anything else is shut up. You don't say anything, and you let the lawyers do their talking. That's the first thing you do. I hope that Iger ran his comments that he made the other day during the earnings call. I hope those comments were run by their lawyers, and they said, okay, those are fine. That's not going to get us into the hot water. But again, like I said, it's hard to say. It's hard to say or predict how DeSantis is going to respond to Iger's comments because, I mean, like I said, it was a dare. It was a threat, and it's a dare. And I'm not sure if you want to, do you want to play a game of chicken with Ron DeSantis? I don't know, man. I really don't know. I mean, I'm all for Disney. Obviously I've got a Disney bias, and I believe that they have a case and all that, but still, man, that's going to be a good one. This is going to be an interesting thing to follow. I digress. I mentioned earlier that I wanted to get back to Disney Plus. I just wanted to get into that conversation before I finish off with Disney Plus stuff, but there's more on the Disney Plus besides them merging. Again, I don't want to call it merging, them combining Disney Plus and Hulu. They are also going to raise the ad-free service rate. Now, you recall Disney Plus, when it first opened or first became a thing, it was completely ad-free. And then somebody got the wise idea, well, hey, let's start running ads on this, and we'll make them pay more to not have the ads. I wonder, how many? I know that Hulu does this already. I don't think that's the case for Netflix. They never got into that. I watch a lot of Netflix. I don't see any ads there, except for their own. They advertise their own stuff. But in any case, they're going to raise the rates. Now, this is in spite of it being the reported cause. There were about 300,000 unsubs for Disney Plus in the last quarter, and I think Disney reported in their earnings call that a lot of that had to do with Disney creating or putting ads on their service and creating an increased rate for an ad-free service. A lot of people unsubbed on that. In spite of that, they're going to raise the prices again. So that tells us that they're not at all worried about those 300,000 subs that they lost. The sub issue is not an issue for Disney. They're not worried about the 4 million subs that they lost for Hotstar. They're not worried about the 300,000 subs they lost in the last month because I guess it's being offset by the revenue being created by the ads. That's business, I guess. They also mentioned that they are going to, A, remove some content from the service, from Disney Plus, and 2, they're going to make less content. They're going to take stuff out, and then they're going to make less. So if you think that there's not enough content on Disney Plus now, wait until Q3. Now, they both sound bad, but it's actually, again, I feel like it's better than it sounds. It's better than you think it sounds. It does reconcile with previous comments that Iger made about them wanting to lean on more their core properties. Star Wars, Marvel, Toy Story, Frozen, that kind of thing. They want to lean on those core properties more. So I would expect, now it's not just limited to that, obviously, but I would expect that the content that is being removed from the service is some of that, obviously the less watched, more fringe content, perhaps. Hopefully that's none of that. When I heard that they were going to do this, I'm like, God, can they make room for that? You guys remember those DVDs? I forget the platinum DVD. God, we need that. That's the kind of stuff that I would watch all day on Disney Plus. But I digress. It sounds a bit like the old Vault, the VHS Vault. Do you guys remember that? They would sell a VHS tape of a movie for a few months, and then they would take it off the market completely for years. For years, you would have to wait a couple years before you could buy Beauty and the Beast on VHS again. Now, that might actually trigger some folks because some of you may know that was a Chapek invention. Chapek created the Vault, and the Vault system is likely what accelerated his ascension in the Disney company. So when I hear about them starting to think about doing the Vault type stuff, I'm like, oh, God, that gives me bad mojo. As for less content, this one I'm particularly actually pleased with, because I have not been pleased with the quality of some of the content created. And I think that's the idea here, is that they want to create less so that they can put more attention, more time on the core, the good stuff. I did not enjoy Season 3 of The Mandalorian. Obi-Wan was okay. Boba Fett, I mean, most people agree Boba Fett was not good. And one of the primary complaints for all of those situations is the lack of production value. Season 3 of The Mandalorian was especially bad, in my opinion. There were scenes in there where I said to Liz, I said, this looks like it was shot for the Hallmark Channel. You know, the lighting, it was just horrendous. The stages looked unfinished and just, it did not look like a professional production, which is weird because season 1 of The Mandalorian, they got all kinds of, credit and accolades for the wizardry of, the theater in the round type situation that they created. They were technological breakthroughs, and they went from that to, a very touching episode. It wasn't good. It didn't look good. The point is, making less content will allow Disney the ability to find these weaknesses, discover these weaknesses before they put a bunch of, crap content on Disney Plus. That is to say, whereas they might have been trying to rush production to keep more content flowing, to keep things constantly moving, constantly adding more content to the service, you tend to rush things more. You pay less attention to it. You take more shortcuts. Mandalorian 3, shortcuts all over the place. Further, less content on Disney Plus could mean more theatrical releases. Again, bigger and better productions for the big screen. Note that Iger opened this earnings call by congratulating Universal and the success of the Super Mario Brothers movie. The very first thing he said was, "Good job, Universal. Mario's great. You have restored my faith in the future of cinema." Really, that's what he said. So fast forward to the Disney Plus conversation, and it feels like Iger might be ready to invest more in, big budget theatrical releases, not content, but films. So that's why I'm encouraged about this news for Disney Plus. All right, one last thing to talk about. As soon as Disney revealed their financial results before this earnings call happened, the stock dropped 10 points. That's a big drip. Look, it looks terrible. Investors did not like Disney's report, so I guess it goes without saying that my reporting here should be taken with a grain of salt. I'm very optimistic, but apparently Wall Street is not quite as optimistic, at least not today. But we've seen this before many, many times, and the stock always comes back. But then that also reminds me, I remember not too long ago that the stock was trading at 198, I think, and now it's at 92. So, we still got a long way to go to get to sort of any great value. Disney's still hurting. Anyway, I have faith. I bought a little more. The opinions of Fresh Baked are our own and should not be considered financial advice. Just throwing that out there. I may have made a terrible decision, but who knows. Thanks for watching, everybody. I love you guys. Let us know if you have any questions in the comments below. And until next time, be safe out there. Be kind to one another. Fresh Baked.